Welcome everyone. It's a little breezy up here, so we're trying to have rocks and clothespins and make it all work. Welcome to our annual summer memorial service. I often end the service with thank yous, and after trying to keep everything in order, my thank yous always suffer because at the end my brain is emptied. So I'm going to start with thank yous this year. And the first one goes out to Judith McCone. She has just worked so tremendously hard for us all these many years. She makes hundreds of phone calls to get people to come and speak for their loved ones, and she puts programs together, and she just is the center of this memorial service. And so I really have a great thank you for Judith, and there's been years where I've forgotten that, so that's the most important. Then of course Steve and his grandson here who's doing the sound. Steve Little, thank you for setting all this up for us. And of course Chester is our rock up here. And at the bottom of the program you'll see each year we have donations can go to the Memorial Fund, and that's very important. The Memorial Fund is sort of it's a very special fund when people are in need, and it's very random. It can be anything from wheelchair and crutches to medical emergencies to just a pick-me-up when people are in hard times. So so your donations are very welcome. So we can get started, and hopefully none of my music will blow into Kennedy's Beach. Thank you. It already started. Maybe bow our heads for the prayer of the departed. Almighty God, we remember before you today your faithful servants, Amy Poole, Joanne McVeigh Wood, Ivy Griffin, Barbara Loeb, Harry Welsman, Barbara Button, McLean Mason, and Catherine McClelland. And may we think again of Amy Poole, as I did not leave enough space for her in mind. We pray that having opened to them the gates of a larger life, you will receive them more and more into your joyful service, that with all who have faithfully served you in the past, they may share in the eternal victory of Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. Please join with us the first and the last verse of our hymn, Eternal Father, Strong to Save. First, we will remember Amy Cool. Is Andy here? We're going to ask you to walk behind Chester, everyone, when they come through because of the cords. So go ahead and walk this way. So I put my chair here to remember.
Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great. What a beautiful day. Amazing. Good morning, my name is Andy Cool, and I'm here to speak about Amy Cool on behalf of my brother and my brother Jamie, and the rest of my family, many of whom are sitting here. Unfortunately, Amy's husband, Jamie, suffered a back injury a couple days ago, which prevented him from being here, and it is killing him, to say the least. So he asked me to speak on behalf of Amy, and I'm going to attempt to read this from my cell phone. I'm sorry. Amy passed away last October after a 15-month battle with breast cancer. She and Jamie were just beginning to enjoy their retirement when she was diagnosed. Despite aggressive treatments, which she endured with grace and humility, she was not able to overcome her cancer. As a public service announcement, and this is from my brother and myself as well, I encourage all of you to undergo annual routine screening for breast cancer if you are a woman, and prostate cancer if you are a man. Had Amy's cancer been found a year earlier, perhaps she would be here today. Early diagnosis does save lives. I will say a little bit about Amy's upbringing and early adult years. Her father, John Pavinen, was an electrical engineer and entrepreneur at a time when the first transistors were being made. As a result of this, he worked for a number of companies developing both transistors and computers. So the family moved around a lot, living in California, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and then back to the region of California, which eventually became known as Silicon Valley. In the 70s, her father started a company that developed one of the first inexpensive integrated circuits, or microprocessor chips. The product was incredibly successful and was used in the first home computers, including the Apple I and II, developed by Wozniak and Jobs. It was also embedded in Atari game consoles and eventually in automobiles. It was so well designed that it is still in use today, with more than 500 million having been sold. John was also very musically talented and creative, and Amy inherited her love of music and art from her dad, learning to play various instruments such as the flute and the conga drums. Amy's mom, Carol, ran the household while John was off creating companies. She was and still is a smart, practical, and hardworking woman, always in motion. Kind, caring, compassionate, and giving were traits she passed on to Amy, as well as a can-do attitude and open-mindedness. Amy demonstrated daily that you can achieve almost anything you set your mind to if you take the time to learn and work hard. Despite all the moving around the family made in her early years, Amy made lifelong friends along the way, many of whom came to visit her and comfort her before she died. After graduating from high school in Radnor, PA, Amy attended Oberlin College in Ohio. She graduated Phi Beta Kappa with a degree in chemistry, and then took time to travel and live in Europe with her college boyfriend, after which she went to California to join Collagen Corporation, which was one of the first biotechnology companies. She then met her first husband and moved to Massachusetts due to his job at Biogen. That marriage did not last long, and at which time Amy had also established a career in technical writing and communications at Millipore Corporation, where she met my brother Jamie. After a few years of dating, they married in 1992. Amy then started her own marketing and communications company, which she ran up until the birth of her two sons, Scott and Douglas. She put her career on hold to raise her family, after which she went back to school and obtained a BFA from Mass College of Art. Jamie built her an art studio, which was her sanctuary, and from it came amazing works that she used to decorate and enhance her home, both here and in Westford, Mass, and which she exhibited at art shows. If interested, you may visit Amy's website, www.amycool.com, where you can view some of the many artworks she created out of wood, clay, and fabric, amongst other things. Amy was always trying to enlighten herself. She enjoyed literature, reading books, and watching movies, particularly science fiction, mysteries, and animated Disney films. She enjoyed going to modern dance performances, the ballet, and art museums. She was an excellent writer, and despite her illness, chronicled her cancer journey in hopes that others dealing with cancer might benefit. Having killed every houseplant she ever owned, for some reason Amy decided to take up outdoor gardening. In a very few short years, she had flower gardens that were in bloom throughout the summer, spring, summer, and fall, particularly flowers that attracted hummingbirds, which she would sit and watch quietly nearby. Her vegetable garden produced delicious veggies of all sorts. Her gardens attracted groundhogs and chipmunks, which became her favorite nemesis that she constructed many ways to battle, often successfully, sometimes not. Another talent she had was fashion design and sewing, which she started getting into as a teenager. She could make dresses, coats, jeans, shirts, virtually anything constructed of fabric, including draperies and boat cushions. She could recover a couch or chair in an afternoon and make them look brand new. She was particularly proud of the wedding dress she made for her niece Kirsten, who's sitting over here, when she got married in Scotland a few years ago. Something about her attracted dogs and cats. Even the most snarly and hyperactive animals would calm down in her presence and then come up to her to be petted. Golf was another passion, and like other endeavors she set her mind to, she became quite proficient. Amy developed a smooth golf swing, playing regularly at Butterbrook Golf Course in Westford, Mass, from the men's tees, and shooting the round of her life a month before she died. She greatly enjoyed hosting parties, Thanksgiving dinners, and summer get-togethers for family and friends. Amy believed that a person's soul remains on earth when they die, and that it lives embodied and carried forward by those that were touched and enhanced by the person that has passed. Amy leaves her husband, Jamie Cool, two fine sons, Scott and Douglas, her mother, Carol Pavenen, her brother, Mike Pavenen, a sister, Jan Hadland, as well as many extended family members and friends that loved her. The family thanks her caregivers at Emerson Hospital in Concord, Mass, and the amazing nurses, doctors, and staff of the Medical Oncology Unit at MGH for their caring and compassion during Amy's final days. Amy loved Cliff Island and the many friends she made here. Our family is grateful for the kindness, support, and love given to Amy by many Cliff Islanders, and also for the compassion we've received since her passing. Thank you all.
Now we will have Karen Griffin for Joanne McVean Wood. James is going to speak for.
No, I'm speaking for, we lost both our mothers this year.
Right. So you're speaking. Okay.
I'm speaking for Mom.
You're speaking for Mom. Okay, so this is
James.
wrong. Okay, so
For Ivy.
who's speaking for
I'm
Joanne?
speaking for Joanne.
Okay, that's what
It's
we have.
confusing.
Yes.
We lost both mothers this year, so bear with us. So my name is Karen Griffin. You all probably know me, but I am Joanne McVean's daughter. Joanne McVean Wood. So my maiden name was Wood. Anyway. I got back up. That's invasive, isn't it? All right. So I wrote a little story for Mom, and I've read it at a couple of services already, so bear with me if you've heard it. But some of you haven't, so I'm going to share. Give me a breath. All right. So all of you who knew Mom knew that she was this boisterous, joyful person. She had a huge heart, and it showed in all the things she did in her life. You always felt the love around Mom. Mom was such a special person who will be greatly missed by me, her family, and all of her friends. Mom grew up here on Cliff Island. She had many friends and family members around and loved spending time with them. She especially cherished her Irish grandmother, Sophie, and she just adored her little brother, Earl, and really hoped for a son. Sorry. I think I've done this a few times. I'd be over this, but it's still emotional. So she really hoped for a son with her first pregnancy because she missed her brother. So she had close cousins and friends. Nancy, Betty, and Shirley stand out to me, but she had many others, as well as dear friends. So they were the Cliff Island girls. I think, Sandra, you were a Cliff Island girl, right? They even had their own little song. Forgive me while I attempt it. I'm not very good, so I'm going to probably just say it. We are the Cliff Island girls. We wear our hair in curls. We wear our dungarees rolled up to our knees. We wear our brother's shirts. We wear our father's ties. And when we kiss the boys, we really make them sigh. Something like that. They were sweet ladies. Mom loved her family. Her grandparents, parents, siblings, cousins, children, nieces, nephews, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all meant the world to her. She adored Dad, and he had a large extended family too. She enjoyed gathering family together to share good food and good stories and a good card game. Speaking of good food, Mom always enjoyed cooking with us kids and grandkids. A lot of fun memories of standing on a stool, helping her cook. We cherish her recipes to this day, but it did ruin me for boxed baked goods. They just don't taste right. I have to make everything from scratch. So Mom had many pets growing up, cats and dogs, of course, but also typical of Cliff Island. She had crows, seagulls, and even a pig named Porky, who used to follow her to the ferry every day. He was like a dog. It was sad when they had to eat Porky eventually. I think she cried at every meal saying, "Is this Porky?" Yeah. She continued to have friendly seagulls greet her on the island. The last one, I believe, she called Josephine. Was that right? And she had a multi-generational family of crows in her home in Sabattis. That was awesome. I loved sleeping there and waking up to those. She did love feeding her birds in Sabattis. Along with the crows, she also had many songbirds and turkeys she fed. Of course, they were little chipmunks, little chippies, she called them, and squirrels that dug into the seeds if her cats didn't get to them first. Sometimes a stray cat, raccoon, or skunk would come get some cat food. Mom had been known to disobey any "do not feed the animal" signs, stuffing leftover into her purse at any opportunity to feed the birds or strays, even when she was traveling overseas. She didn't care. It was never embarrassing. Her last dog was sweet little Ginger, who needed daily insulin injections, which was no problem for my mom. I did stab myself once when I tried to do it, so I'm glad Mom took that job over. Her last cat was Miss Molly, a spunky little thing just like Mom. Does Mom love to sing and dance? You knew she was happy when she was puttering around the house singing songs while picking up. She also played the piano and taught her granddaughter Jennifer the song "The Rose," which my niece cherishes to this day. Sing-alongs were a favorite, and she loved to go out dancing with Dad. They were a joy to watch dancing together if you've ever witnessed it. It really was fun. They were even active square dancers for a while and forced me to go too. Joy. She was always dancing in life, and you can see it in her photos. And I don't think I had many photos up here with it, but she always had an arm in the air going, woo, woo, woo. Mom had a green thumb, unlike Ann, I hear. She had houseplants that were just like a garden, a jungle. She had to give away one of her houseplants once to a doctor's office because it just got too big to have in her little ranch. It was like she gave it to a friend who was a doctor. Her outside flower beds rivaled the ones you would see in magazines. It was a team effort with Dad helping her with her beds. My father would even dig up her dahlia roots every year so he could store them in the basement and replant them. My thumb is not as green as hers, but I do try. Mom loved reading. She always had a book going, always read to us kids as well, and grandkids. I remember reading with her Where the Red Fern Grows. You guys ever read that one? That's a tearjerker, and we read it together, and tears were shed. As we got older, we would always exchange books that we had read, and it was sad to see her memory fail her so that she could no longer follow a story and enjoy a book, because it really was so important to her. Some of you may not realize this, but Mom was a nurse, but that wasn't just her career, even when she wasn't actively working as a nurse. It's what she was. It was just who she was. Cuts were cleansed and bandaged. Splinters were removed, whether you wanted them to be or not. Temperatures were taken, not always oral. Alcohol rubs for fevers, twists or sprains were iced and wrapped. Cramps or backaches were soothed with a hot water bottle. Blood pressures were taken, Robitussin was administered, vapor rub was rubbed, and the humidifiers were run. You got the full gamut. No ailment was ignored, and germs never stood a chance. Bleach was a common cleanser in our home. To this day, if a towel doesn't smell like bleach, it's not clean. It just doesn't smell right. Dad also had to adjust her boiler to the highest temperature so that the water was hot enough to sterilize the dishes and scald the kids. Mom had a rich spiritual life as well. She was raised here on Cliff Island and attended the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But she loved to go to different churches and talk scripture with anyone, really. She never turned away a Jehovah's Witness. Instead, she made them her friends. And Mom was baptized at the South Lewiston Baptist Church by Pastor Lombardi. She later attended services at Sabattis Baptist Church with Pastor Russ. And angels had a special meaning to Mom. And she has several angel figurines, earrings, keychains, and brooches. And she loved to share them with her friends and family. And my father actually had an angel vision when she was suffering breast cancer. And that really helped them through that whole process. And she knows they're real. She says, I saw it. So there are so many good memories that we will all cherish. And I hope that, we'll all share some stories today. So, thank you. And thank you everybody who's put this together. I appreciate it.
I'd like to ask Jamie Griffin to come up for his mother, Ivy Griffin.
Well, I didn't prepare anything today, and if she's watching right now, she's probably rolling her eyes at me. But she always knew I like to shoot from the hip, so here we go. I'm going to do my best. You know, we lost Mom in May. She's about a little over a month shy of her 99th birthday. So I consider myself very, very lucky to have her for that long in my life. But she had quite an extraordinary life, and you know, most of you may not know how extraordinary. She was born in England, London. At the age of 17, Hitler ordered the unrelenting bombing of England. London was bombed for 50 nights in a row. 42,000 civilians lost their lives. Over 45,000 were wounded. 1 million people were left homeless. And she survived that. And she never had a very pessimistic view of the world. I think most of us would after surviving something like that. In the 1950s, she moved to Canada, to Toronto, with some of her siblings, became a citizen of Canada, second citizenship. And not long after that, she managed to secure a job in Bermuda. And while she was there, she met a young, handsome American sailor that swept her off her feet. I like to think that he tricked her. I could have grown up on Bermuda. But somehow he managed to drag her here to Cliff Island, and I ended up hauling a lot of lobster traps because of it. But, that being said, when I was a kid, I watched her become an American citizen. Citizenship in 3 countries. It's quite amazing. She was a wonderful mother, always nurturing, always loving, always kind, and for the most part, pretty positive. Being here on Cliff Island, one of her favorite foods is seafood. What a better guy to marry. Got endless supply of seafood anytime you want it. I like to think I got some of my traits from her growing up. Sorry, I'm probably not speaking into the microphone as well as I should. When the British invasion came, you know, the rock bands, she probably would have preferred that I'd have been more of a fan of the Beatles. I was more of a Rolling Stones, Who fan. When I was a teenager, I had been in Portland. I came back to the island with a brand new album from The Who. And I won't say what the album cover looked like, but it was pretty crude. And she looked at it and said, "James, that's revolting." I said, "Mom, they're from England, just like you." I think she smiled, you know, rolled her eyes again at me, but she had a great sense of humor. I grew up, as well as my sister, probably every Friday night watching the British comedies, Monty Python, Benny Hill, things like that. Anyway, she was well-traveled, read constantly, very knowledgeable about pretty much anything, could have a conversation about anything. And she's going to be missed, but you know, I don't really think she's gone, or any of these people are really gone, because so many of us inherit some of their best traits. I probably should have inherited a few more. But anyhow, thank you all for coming. We're going to miss her. and have a great day. Thanks. First shooting from the hip, blessings from the back.
Mary Farrer will speak for Barbara Lowe.
Good morning. Perfect day in Maine for a memorial service, I must say. Barbara Den Logue was 74 of Sanford, died Saturday, June 11th at her home. She was born February 9th, 1948, daughter of the late Thomas Burns and Elizabeth Ann Ryan Burns. She was preceded in death by her daughter Sheila O'Reilly Den. Surviving is her husband, Terry Logue, and sister Judy Burns McCormick and Janice Elizabeth Burns Bowditch of New York. Barbara was our cousin. Her mother was Elizabeth Burns, and her sister was Nancy Benoit and Mary Seagrave. So many of you may not remember Barbara, but Barbara and her family summered at the Ryan Cottage on Cliff Island on the South Point. She grew up with many of you, like Peggy Akers, Kenny McLeod, Billy Luneberg, Nancy Lux, probably Earl. I'm looking at all these people out here, Mary Ellen. Many of you knew Barbara, how you hung out with her younger sister, Judy. Barbara grew up in Winchester, Massachusetts, and then she got married in Boston to Bob Den, and then she separated from him and married again Terry Logue and they moved to North Carolina, where she worked at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill and was an administrative assistant to a chemistry department for about 2 decades. Let's see, what else do I have of her? Sorry, to refer to my notes. She was a talented artist, especially in watercolors. She loved to dabble in photography. She and her husband Terry were very avid bird watchers and loved feeding them. They lived in a log cabin with a huge pond in Pittsboro, North Carolina, until the past year when health concerns made it impossible for her to stay. Barbara also had breast cancer, and she survived for many, many years until it spread. So Barbara's sister Judy, which many of you know, will be visiting on Tuesday this week and staying for several days. So be on the lookout for Judy. She was sorry she'd missed this service, but wanted everybody to remember Barbara. Thank you.
Heather McLeod for her father, Harry Welsman. I said McLeod, I meant McDonald.
Whatever.
All these mixed.
Thank you, Bonnie. I just want to say thank you. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. This is a great day. The island comes together, and it's just a really neat day. My name's Heather McDonald, and I'm going to talk briefly about my dad, Harry Welsman. I'm not going to do his list of accomplishments. What I want to talk about this morning is how he impacted my life. Dad was best known on Cliff Island for being married to Sally Dyer, and they would have celebrated their 63rd anniversary in July. So Mom really sort of exemplifies for me what a faithful wife is all about. Dad is also known on the island for being the island bagpiper. Most of you remember him marching around our front yard next to Paul's house. And so many people over the years would say to me, "Oh, I heard your dad on the other side of the island," or "I heard your dad when I was boating." And Don and I grew up listening to that. Sometimes we didn't love it, but most of the time We did. Dad, and I appreciate you playing Amazing Grace. Dad actually played that at my wedding. He piped me down the aisle and played that. So, anyway, so I'm going to just sort of talk about what Dad meant in my life. He was an accomplished piper, and Dad was accomplished at most things he tried. He rarely failed at anything. But I don't want to list his accomplishments. I just want to tell you how he impacted me as a person. He was successful at most things, but he also had some great challenges in his life. And most of Dad's challenges were relational. Our relationship was definitely one of those challenges for him and for me. We struggled much. But through those challenges, I learned so much. In my view, I didn't have a whole bunch of bright spots with my dad over the years. And that was my perspective, and I'm sure that was jaded. But God really worked in those dark spots and the bright spots. About 10 years ago, God woke me up in the morning and told me to write my dad a letter. And I was just overwhelmed because I had no idea what I was going to write. He told me to tell my father how my father had been a reflection of God to me. And I didn't know how I was going to do that because I didn't have a lot of bright spots. So I sat there with my pen for about an hour, mad as a bee, thinking, how am I going to do this? What am I going to say? Bright spots with my dad didn't come easy for me. But after about an hour, I sat there praying, and God told me what to say. So I started to write, and I wrote a letter about a time years before in my life when I was frightened and lost and 15 and pregnant. I got pregnant at 15, and my parents didn't find out until I was 7 months along. And during those last few months of my pregnancy, my dad was just amazing to me. He was my defender. He was a wonderful guide, loving, patient, just an incredible person to me. He showed me the character of God. And I didn't meet God until 22 years later. But he showed me just how wonderful and loving and kind and gracious God is. He walked with me through a critical time for me and my baby. He supported me ferociously through making agonizing decisions. And I wrote that letter and I gave it to him. And for a while, I sent it to him. And for a while, I almost don't think he knew what to do with that letter. He kind of looked at it and wasn't really sure what I was saying, but it was clear that he needed to know, to me, how wonderful he had been to me during that time. It was a huge bright spot in our relationship. After that time, I surrendered my baby for adoption. I don't know who knows that and who doesn't. I'm very open about it. But I surrendered a little girl for adoption. And my dad and my mom walked through that with me. My dad used to kind of joke around when we would go out in public and my belly was out here, and he'd say, if anybody says anything, Heath, I'm going to get them. I'm going to say something. I am not going to let them say anything to you. So he was just that guy. So after I
surrendered my daughter for adoption, my dad and I kind of reverted back to some real challenging times. And our relationship was difficult again for a lot of years. And again, it was, I'm sure, partly my perspective, I know it was, but it was also, I was an independent person. Dad raised me to be independent. He's the reason I was independent. And so most of my adult life, as my family can attest, my dad and I were struggling. And then about 4 years ago, Dad was diagnosed with dementia. And for whatever reason, and I'll never know this side of heaven, what the reason was, he chose me to be the guy, girl, lady, who walked alongside him. And he just loved me and cared for me in that time that I was caring for him. It was a really hard time, and it was a really dark time, but it was a really special time for me. I got to know him in ways that I had never known him. He was soft and kind, and it was just an honor, incredible honor, to be that person in his life. And like I said, I would never have said it would have been me, but it was. So I wanted to just share briefly that we all lost loved ones. You know, we're all here to honor loved ones. And we have great memories, and they had gifts and talents, but they're also hard times. And God uses those hard times too. He uses those things in people's lives that aren't so great and aren't so special. He uses it all. And I just wanted to share, I've heard it said that the darkest nights have the brightest stars. And I know this is true. My dad impacted me and others in many ways. He taught me much, and some of these lessons were for sure lessons that I wouldn't have chosen for myself. But they were lessons I needed all the same. He wasn't perfect, none of us are, but God uses the whole of a person to make an impact on others, not just the bright, pretty parts. The dark spots in someone else's life make the bright parts shine brighter. Growth happens in the dark and in the light. In the New Testament, John 1:5 says, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot extinguish it." And James 1:17 says, "Every gift God freely gives us is good and perfect, streaming down from the Father of lights, who shines from the heavens with no hidden shadow or darkness, and is never subject to change." I appreciate y'all bearing with me, and thank you so much for this day and what you've done.
Thank you. Ellen Struble will read Death is Nothing at All. Death is nothing at all. I have only slipped away into the next room. I am I, and you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still. Call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference in your tone. Wear no forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed.
at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name ever be the household word that it always was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the ghost of a shadow in it. Life means all that it was ever meant. It is the same as it ever was. There is absolutely unbroken continuity. What is this death but a negligible accident? Why should I be out of mind because I am out of sight? I'm just waiting for you, for an eternal somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
Barbara McLean Mason, 90 years old, of Portland, Maine, passed away on May 24th, 2022. She was born on October 26, 1931, in Orange, East Orange, New Jersey. Barbara is known as Button, was raised in Maplewood, New Jersey. She was predeceased by her parents, Dr. Raymond and Ann Cook, and her first husband, Robert C. McLean. She was survived by her spouse, Robert Mason, her brother, Raymond Cook Jr., her children, Scott and Lisa, McLean, Robin McLean, Keith and Candace McLean, 5 stepchildren, 7 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. She graduated from Columbia High School, received her associate's degree from Stevens College, and her Bachelor's of Science from the University of Pennsylvania. Button loved gardening, boating, and knitting. A small private celebration of life was held in Portland, Maine. She will be remembered for her warm smile, generosity, and fun-loving spirit she brought to all things. And our last remembrance will be Kent or Laura McClellan for Catherine McClellan.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Kent McClellan, Catherine's spouse. Catherine died rather suddenly, unexpectedly, in June 18th, of complications of a blood infection. And we held a memorial service right here in this beautiful spot just a week and a day ago, and that we chose that date because all our family could be here at that point. And now much of her family, many of her son and family and her son-in-law and his boys have had to go back to their homes to work or to school. And Laura, our daughter, is still here with us, and of course Bob Howard, her brother, is here. But we want to thank everybody who came to last week's memorial event as well. That really meant, everybody who participated in that really meant a lot to us. So thank you. Catherine was a long-time summer visitor. She was the 4th generation in her family to come here to Cliff Island. Her mother, Ann Coyle Howard, came many years, since she was a baby, she was coming to Cliff Island, and through the rest of her life. Her grandfather, David Cushman Coyle, came here as a small child, and then continued to come to Cliff Island for many years. Her great-grandmother and a sister built a house here on Cliff Island, a cottage, the one that Joan Benoit and Scott Samuelson now own across from the school, in the 1890s. So she's had long roots on the island. Catherine grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, near Washington, D.C., where her father, Gordon Howard, worked in the government in housing. And Ann and Gordon brought their 3 kids to the island every summer. Catherine's older sister, Peggy, who died quite tragically in her 20s. And Kathy, as everybody knew her then, and of course Bobby, who's been on the island ever since. They brought them to the Coyle House, which is just down the beach here, the next house down toward the bluffs, the one with the yellow trim. And so Ann and the house, the original family house, had been sold out of the family when David Coyle died, and Ann and her brother John Coyle bought this house down here and shared it in the summertime. And so every summer Catherine would come with the rest of her family here and spend the month of July. In the 1970s, Ann Gordon bought, with Mary and Norman Seagrave, bought land on South Point, and both those families built houses there. The house that the Howard family built was Bob Howard's first building project when he was just about 20 years old. Catherine and I have continued to come to that house for 50 years now, approximately. We brought our families here and have come every year we could. Catherine only missed 2 years of her life coming to spend some time in the summer here. One was when she was age 10, and her father was hospitalized with an ulcer right before they had to leave, and so they missed that summer. The other summer, of course, was 2020, the first COVID summer. Catherine went to Oberlin College, and we met there, which was one of the greatest things that had happened in my life. We married the day before she graduated. In our early years of marriage, we lived in lots of different places, actually, from New England, a couple places here, to Alaska for a year, and then New Jersey for a year, and then Florida. We moved around a lot. She taught elementary school for 3 years in that period, and then we had 2 kids, Laura and David. And in 1982, we moved to Grinnell, Iowa, where I had a job. And Catherine, still with young children, went back and started taking courses in mathematics. She was interested in pursuing a master's in math education. She'd really enjoyed that when she was teaching. And she did very well in those courses, and they, the department hired her as the second director of the Grinnell College Math Lab, which was a tutoring operation. And she spent 28 years as the director of the Math Lab. She taught cohorts of student tutors how to, help people with their homework in calculus or statistics and not make them feel stupid, which is really not so easy. And she took the really hard cases, the ones with extreme math anxiety, and worked with them individually so that they could pass that calculus course or that statistics course that they absolutely needed for their major. She eventually taught statistics on campus and then at the local men's prison for several years, where the college had a liberal arts in the prison program. After retirement, we stayed in Grinnell and moved to a retirement community there, and she continued to be very active in the community right up until her death. We remember Catherine for a lot of things. A lot of things you heard if you were here last week. For her kindness and generosity, for her ready laugh when she was conversing with friends, for her warm interest in people, how much she loved to read and play games, her great talents as a creative cook that I benefited from for so many years, her ability to plan and to organize, and she could make something happen without bossing people around. It just happened because she had the ideas in it, and people carried on. I want to especially flag her deep love of the outdoors. She loved hiking and biking and kayaking and swimming in the ocean or in lakes, any place outdoors. Wherever we went, she always wanted to visit the places of natural beauty around wherever that was. We traveled a lot. And this love of the outdoors, I'm sure, was awakened and nurtured and intensified by all her summers of coming to Cliff Island, this beautiful island that she so loved. I thank you.
Please join us. Please join us in singing Let There Be Peace on Earth. Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Please stand for our last hymn, God of our Fathers. We had one more verse, but Chester just said the wind took it. Would everyone like one more verse? Yes, Chester, one more verse. Everyone looked up like, what? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming this afternoon. And please look around on the sides and enjoy this beautiful afternoon. And thanks again for coming. One last verse, God of our fathers.